Before we continue with the video, if you like what I'm doing here on this channel, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel a lot. Anyway, let's get back to the video. Welcome back to my Create an RPG series. In this episode, we will start creating some AI logic so that we have an opponent we can actually interact with and have it have some functionality of what we have built as well. So let's start doing that. We'll do some administrative things by creating a folder. We'll call this folder AI because that seems very prudent for an AI. Okay, now we're going to be needing a few different things. One of the things is we're going to be needing a navigation mesh. A navigation mesh we probably don't have in this project. No, so nothing that starts with nav. So we'll go to volumes and we'll find a nav mesh bounds volume. Dragging this out like so, and we'll drag it down a little bit and we'll scale it some. And we'll scale it so that it covers the whole ground of where we're actually using as our play area. So not quite there yet, we need to scale it a little bit more, like so. Now, the reason for nav mesh, of course, is if you haven't watched my AI tutorials yet, is because that allows us to have a character using the area that is covered by the mesh to determine where to go when it's given certain directions. To see that it is working, we can press the P key by default, which will then mark up green everything that the nav mesh currently covers. Covering the area up to about half the staircase in my case here, which is fine because I don't really need him to walk up here in this case. But if you wanted it to cover that area as well, you could just scale it in the Z direction and you see that it covers the staircase now as well. So pressing P again, we get this disabled. So now we at least have the ability to navigate over this area for our AI. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to have a character which is based on our base character so that it gets the functionality that we have already built and will continue to build in that character. So what we'll do is we'll go to our characters folder and get our third person character. We will right click and create that child blueprint. We'll call this an AI third person character or something. Let's call it BP AI character. Yeah, that makes more sense. Okay, so we have that character. We can now drag it into our AI folder. There might be something to be said about keeping all characters gathered here because this is a folder with characters. That's a bit of a organizing issue. That's up to you how you want to keep track of it. But even though there is some overlap, this one sort of belongs in both the AI and character folder. It's open for some freedom here, I say. Anyway, for now we will be leaving this one as it is, and we will be starting to create our behavior tree. Now to create our behavior tree, we go to artificial intelligence and we click behavior tree. We will name this BT underscore, let's call it basic. And a behavior tree needs a blackboard, so we'll create one of those. So we create an artificial intelligence blackboard. We'll call this BP underscore, let's call it basic also. If you find that you have better naming conventions for this, then that's fine. Opening up the behavior tree now, we get to this view, which only has a root currently. And we can also see here that it has by default assigned the blackboard that we created. If it has not, make sure to assign it here so that you have it. To start off, let's give our character some very basic roaming behavior, because that's generally what one does when it doesn't have a specific target. So going to our blackboard, we can, by clicking up here, we can add another key here and we can say we want to have a vector. We can call this roam location, so it's very clear what it is doing. Going back to our behavior tree now, we can say we want to have, first we need a sequence And if you're not familiar with how sequences and selectors and other parts of this works, I'll post a link to I guess my AI playlist, so you can like delve into that if you want to. We will not be spending that much time on explaining them in this video. So the first thing we need to do is we need to determine a location, we need to move to that location, and then we can have something like a wait, to like wait before we try to go there again. So just type in wait, and we can here assign how long we want to wait. So we can say like maybe 4 seconds, and we can have a random deviation, so 2 seconds. That means it will be 4 plus minus 2 seconds that it will be waiting. Before that we said we wanted to move somewhere, so we can use the move to node there, and it just needs to know of a location to move to, or an actor if you want to have that. Currently it's set to self actor, so we'll change that to be our roam location. So now the only thing that remains here is to have the roam location determined. Now we can do this by creating a new task. So we go to new task. This is the task we get. It's called something weird. So we'll go back to our folder and make sure to rename this immediately. And we can call this BTT for blueprint, behavior tree task, and call it find roam location or something of that nature. That's pretty descriptive, I would say. Now in here we're going to be keeping it very, very simple. We will be going to our functions, and we will be overriding our receive execute AI function. And from here we will just be trying to get a location randomly in the world. So we'll get our controlled pawns location to begin with, so we can have a sort of frame of reference to find this location to go. So get actor location, like so. And from here we can say we want to get a random point which we're able to navigate to. So dragging off this, we can say get random random point navigatable radius. There is something to be said for using the reachable one here as well. We'll go with the random one. Get random point navigatable radius for now. We might be changing this later. We'll see how advanced we make the AI. For a radius here, we can either have a value like 500, or we can promote it to a variable, so we have something a little bit more modular. We can call this one roam radius. And compiling now, it will have the default value that we set to 500 before. Using this, we can now say that we want to save this to our roam Blackboard key. However, we need a way to actually communicate it out from our behavior tree, so our task. So to do this, we will create a key here, which we'll call new roam location, and it will be of the type Blackboard key selector. And by making this one instance editable now, it is available to be read from the outside, so we can actually save it here. So we'll do that. We'll drag out our new roam location, and we'll say set Blackboard value as vector, since it's a vector we're currently working with. So we'll hook it up. And then we'll hook up the location we actually calculated. And then we can say finish execute, and we can hook up the successful value here to be successful or not there. So this is essentially going to give us our location. So going back to our behavior tree, we can now call on this roam location behavior tree task, like so. And we need to set the new roam location to be the roam location that we have created from the Blackboard over here, so that it's actually going to go in here and set that key so that we can move to that key, and then we can wait, and then this can proceed again. So that's the very basic what we need for the AI. And now to get it to work, we need to also create a controller for our AI, so we can actually make use of this behavior tree. So we'll go to Blueprint class, and we will type in AI controller. And you see here we have an AI controller over here. We call this BP AI controller. Now in here we don't need to do a whole lot. Essentially the only thing that we need to do is just tell our controller that it should be using the behavior tree that we have created, and we do that on the begin play. So we'll say run behavior tree, and the behavior tree it should be running is the one we have called basic, like so. So now what remains is to say to our character that it should be using our AI controller, so that when it is actually being controlled by an AI, it will behave like we have assigned here. So we go to our AI controller, which I currently cannot see, so let's open it up. And then we'll go and type in controller, and you can see here we have an AI controller class that we can assign. So we can assign the BP AI controller like so. And that should be pretty much it. The very last part is that we actually need to have the AI here, which is in this instance this character, be an AI character, because currently it is going to be of the warrior class. We can see over here in the top right outliner that that's what this currently is. So we'll make sure to mark our BP AI character over here. We'll right click and we'll say replace. And now this character over here we can see is an AI character. Pressing play now, we can see that our character is walking around, and it's doing so in a T pose, or actually an A pose. And the reason for this is of course because our base class, which this is derived from, doesn't have a blend space assigned. So if we go to our variable here, the class walk blend space, and we zero out that, we can see that it's blank. So if we were to pick a warrior one here now for this one, we can see that the character will run around like it is of the warrior class essentially. So I think that will do it for now. We'll pick this up in the next episode. Hope to see you there. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you did not like it, leave a dislike. Leave any suggestions or comments you have down below. Subscribe and share this video if you want to see more like it in the future. That is all for now. Keep on learning. Take care.